Yeah.
This is Senate Transportation, and we are here to talk about the miscellaneous DMV bill, and we are, is this the 19th?
You got it.
It's Tuesday, the 19th.
Okay.
Yep.
So for the record, I'm Damon Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. Let me see if I can run through things here. So if we start with, section 16, that's the hands-free CDL section. And I'm sorry, I don't know what page your side by side it's on.
I have it as draft 3.1, 14, but I don't have a side by side.
Yes, it is page 14 of draft 3.1 from the House. So the language in this section here provides that there's a general prohibition on texting, which is the manual texting of on a device. And then it provides an exception for communicating with law enforcement officials. And then it provides additional exemptions on page 16 that says the prohibition set forth in this subsection does not apply to hands-free use, activation or deactivation of hands-free use, provided that the device is securely mounted or the activation or deactivation is carried out through an internal feature of the device. The use of global positioning system, and then instances when the operator has moved the vehicle to the side of or off the public highway. The chair asked me to look at the surrounding states. And generally what I found in the surrounding states is that there's a requirement that the device be securely mounted when you're using the GPS features on the device. And then in Maine, they require that it's only drivers over 18 who can use hands-free. But generally, other than that, there's their language there clarifies that, or is a little more clear that for hands-free use, it doesn't necessarily have to be securely mounted. But if you're using it as your GPS, it does need to be securely mounted, or you need to be doing that through an internal feature of the vehicle, which would be like if you have your Android Auto or your Apple
CarPlay.
Yeah. And then it runs through the screen because that's a securely mounted, so you don't have to like reach and find your device while you're driving if you're trying to figure out the turn.
And would it count, like, so if I've got CarPlay going, but I have my phone in my pocket or in my bag and I'm not using it, but it's connected, that's allowed under this definition.
So
For a CDL driver.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Exactly.
well, so the question here is the activation or deactivation of hands-free use if it's not securely mounted. So
like I
if
can't
you-
pull it out and try to set it all up while I'm driving. I would have to have had it set up, or like the phone would have to have auto connected it without me doing
Or
it.
it's securely connected to your cell phone.
Or yeah.
right, if it's securely mounted, under the language that the House is considering, it would need to be securely mounted or carried out through the vehicle. So in other words, if you have a vehicle where if your device is in Bluetooth mode, it automatically connects and automatically loads up, then you'd be okay. But if you have an older vehicle where that's not the case, under the language here, to activate or deactivate hands-free use, it needs to be securely mounted. But there's no requirement around the global positioning system, and in other states, it's the opposite. It's that your global positioning system be securely mounted. Oh, actually, no, in here it does say or securely mounted. I'm sorry, it is in our language. In other states, it's the focus is on the global positioning system, not the activation or deactivation. And so the concern there is whether someone could run afoul of having the phone on the seat next to them, activating, then proceeding to drive. Obviously, we don't want folks reaching around, you know, digging through their stuff to activate while they're moving down the
No, I
highway.
don't want
But,
any of
yeah,
that. But
but the question is, yeah,
in this system, and this might be a question for you, are there points against their license? Because of the points for CDL Live.
so under the CDL laws, and I might turn to these folks who would know
Yep.
off the top of their head.
But before we get there, Pat's got
Yeah.
a question too.
Well, my question was define, is there a definition of securely mounted?
It's just the plain English,
Yeah.
really mounted. Some states require that.
It's there.
And then we do define securely mounted, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, 1495.
Yeah, so it's in an accessory that's specifically designed or built to support the hands-free use and is not affixed to the windshield. I'm sorry, I was thinking.
It's a full definition.
Yes.
Do you mind if I just ask for some clarity on that? So wait, it can't be affixed to the windshield or that. right?
Yeah,
So
on a commercial motor vehicle, it can't be affixed to the windshield. The requirements are, I believe, a little bit different for regular motor vehicles.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my dad has an Isuzu, so it's like a flat face. And so he has never, this is the only vehicle I could possibly think of that you would actually put it onto your windshield. If you can't do that, that's not allowed. You could like put it in your like heating and cooling vent. You could put it on the dashboard. You could have it in a cup holder thing, but you can't have it on the windshield. Interesting.
Or your cup holder by weather.
But you physically could put it on the windshield, you're just not supposed to. I mean, there are other ways.
It's true,
But
yes,
I
you
just,
could,
but just,
but you shall.
but my question is, so this conversation that we're having now is only about, CDL.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so
We're driving.
for regular, yeah, for
Or
regular,
what? What's the other?
Just driving a commercial motor vehicle doesn't say you have to have a CDL.
So that would be,
these are, you have to have a CDL to operate a commercial motor vehicle unless an exception applies.
So commercial, so if I'm driving a small delivery van, that's a commercial vehicle, isn't it?
So commercial motor vehicle is defined for our purposes of our statutes. Yeah, so there are commercial vehicles that do not require a CDL to operate.
There are.
Yes, so for example, if you've probably seen like from Lloyd's Plumbing and Heating and Catamount Solar and all these different companies where the salespeople or the folks who go out doing assessment are driving little Ford pickup trucks or cars that have the logo. Those are commercial vehicles, but they're not commercial motor vehicles under the definition of the statute.
Poundage.
Yeah.
26,000 something pounds.
Yeah, the heavy duty vehicles, yeah, we're talking large vehicles, and there are different classes of CDLs and types, but this, you know, here we're talking trailer trucks, large box trucks, dump trucks, that sort of thing. What have I left out?
I know, you're right. The definition, this is section 4100, so it's the CDL section. And so it's defined in the definitions of 4100, what commercial vehicles we're referring to, but you're dead on.
Yeah.
The other ones.
So Andy,
I'm wondering about about the navigation system, since this is a exception to the requirement that you can't text, but it says if you're the use of a global positioning system, why even have that in there if it's not texting? We can text it.
So
Navigation system.
it's both hands-free use and I think the aim here is to capture both hands-free use and texting. So handheld, you'll notice the title is texting violations, handheld mobile telephone violations. So no operator shall engage in texting, and then and then it provides that prohibitions. It actually doesn't have a hands.
Yeah, I don't see anything that says, it says
I gotta go back to the regular
There's a-
section.
when it says that does not apply, is the prohibition set forth in this subsection does not apply to unless those things includes global positioning or navigation system. The prohibition set forth in
Yeah.
the subsection
So-
is just,
Existing law, there we go. Under subsection C, which is in the ellipses. General prohibition on use of handheld mobile telephones. No operator shall use a handheld mobile telephone while driving a commercial motor vehicle. Use of a handheld mobile telephone is permissible by operators of a commercial motor vehicle when necessary to communicate with law enforcement officials or other emergency services. Motor carriers shall not require drivers to engage in texting while driving. And shall not allow or require its drivers to use handheld mobile telephones while driving a commercial motor vehicle. And that's in the case of like a bus or something like that. So the way the section reads, there's a definitions, there's a general prohibition on texting.
again,
In looking at the section, what I might suggest is that your further proposal of amendment splits out these exceptions into a new subsection, because the way they read, I think you can read them because it says well, yeah, so this wouldn't cover hands-free use of a mobile telephone, but it would cover hands-free texting. And I'm not sure if that's the intent. So you may want to look to the department here to hear more on their intent.
I'd like to hear that. I'm most concerned in subsection 4, 6, securely mounted means, because most everybody I know that is in a truck does hands-free texting.
Right. And so,
And it's not mounted, it's usually in their jacket or in their pocket or someplace like that. And they just dictate their message talking about it. And I don't think that that's our intention to stop that.
yeah, so right now it permits the hands-free texting. What it requires secure mounting for is the activation or deactivation. Or it requires it to either be securely mounted or done through the vehicle's internal features of the device or the motor vehicle. So theoretically here, you could also say, Google activate hands-free.
You can say that.
You could say that
Yep.
as long as you're not touching the device. Because that I think would be an internal feature, and correct me if you have.
So you're
different
not touching the
understanding, but-
device if it's on your person.
Yeah, so I think the question here though is, you could instead say the activation or deactivation of hands. Well, yeah. Yeah, so
When I read through the stuff that you had from New York, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, all the states around us,
their
That was-
focus seems to be on secure mounting if you're using it for GPS.
got it right. And
So,
I think that makes sense. I don't want you looking at a map, you know, or in any. Yeah. But the rest of it, as long as you're not touching it and you're dictating.
right. So I would defer to the department for the reasons why they asked for the language. My understanding in a quick look at the other states was that their focus on secure mounting was focused on GPS and navigation system use. so that if you are using it for that purpose, it's in a place there
So
where you're not
why don't we
digging around for
quickly
it.
get the department, because we've got a number of people that are gonna have to leave.
Right.
You've heard all of our confusion.
I have, it's, for the record, I'm Matthew Nesto. I'm the Chief of Safety of the Department of Motor Vehicles. So I think the initial intent of the change of this was to somewhat standardize it to the regular non-commercial vehicle section. And particularly, we were running into issues in court where it was the definition of what use was, which was causing the problem. The judges were not finding, or the officer or the trooper wasn't able to discover that the operator was using it, because they would say, we're not on the phone, we're not making a phone call, or we're not
Just
texting.
holding it.
They're just holding it, right? And so the judge would, by right of whatever the judge would determine, to say, we haven't proved that we were using it. And so the intent was to standardize these with the non-commercial vehicle section, which we felt we kind of ported the language over from that section, which does have some element of securely attached to the vehicle as well. But I wouldn't necessarily say I disagree holistically with what you're discussing, as far as for us. I mean, yeah, if it was on the person's body, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, there's times where I'm driving around with the phone in my pocket as well. That to us, that is not, manipulating, using the phone, activating it, if you can do it through another autonomous way. And I think, the language can be altered so that it meets that definition. But I don't have any specific concerns about changing that so that it's allowed.
Why are we different than all the states around us?
I think a lot of the other states, maybe we're being a little bit more proactive in the concern for these phones. It could be a lot of these. If you look at the federal regulation, it's very nondescript, and there's very limited information. So some of these other states may be going with just what bare bones minimum federal regulation is. But I think here we're concerned that, we see drivers every day who, are talking and manipulating and working on the phone. It's part of our daily lives. And so the concern is that crashes will occur. Crashes do occur, or distraction, as it's been mentioned before. Distraction comes in so many different venues. We can't necessarily, suss out every single one of them, but having some strict laws, particularly for 80,000, 90,000 pound vehicles, I think is important on our end.
Right.
So can you speak to actual crashes that have happened and how you get information, and if you get information from the companies that actually are doing that are providing the service?
Yeah, so a lot of times, and of course, in these big rigs now, most of these trucks are also connected vehicles, right? And so they have electric logging devices, they have internal cameras, they have external facing cameras. And when a crash occurs and we go out and we, either the state troopers investigate it or we investigate it, we're pulling in all that data from what occurred. And oftentimes what you'll see is, just a standard, easy run of the mill video showing the driver going along. He's either eating a bag of chips or he's, on the phone and he's eating a bag of chips. And then all it takes, at 65 miles per hour is just to get a little bit off. And, it's an irreparable, circumstance potentially if you get off into the rough side. And so those are the types of things that we're finding, where it's not, be very blunt, it's not just phones. It's combing your hair. It's eating a bag of chips. It's, anything else that keeps us busy, whether it's commercial trucks or non-commercial vehicles. But certainly the phones tend to be one of the bigger draws because our lives are connected to it. In trucking, their lives are connected. Their work is connected to it. And there's a lot of work that gets done through that. So that's what we're seeing. And when we have crashes, we'll often request that data from the company directly. There's some federal regulations that really kind of requires them to provide that for federal investigations, which we conduct. And so we do get a lot of that data from the companies when we request it.
Okay. So, do you ever, if the company won't provide the data, do you have a way to get it?
It's a little convoluted. So the big stick, right, that the federal government has with trucking is interstate commerce. And so to be able to operate in interstate commerce, you need a US DOT number that's active from the federal government. And so for companies that are interstate, meaning from Vermont to somewhere else, if we run into issues, then we work with our federal partners to make a physical request of the company. If the physical request from US DOT is ignored, then they just suspend that company's operating authority in the country until which time they're able to provide it. So we have some mechanisms there. They rarely ever have to go that far. But the in-state vehicles, you have a dump truck that operates in the state of Vermont and then leaves the state. Those would be a little bit more difficult for us to connect with and get that data from, because they don't need a US DOT number. They're operating within our borders. They're subjected to mostly our state laws, federal laws through state law. And so those are a little bit more difficult to work with.
Did you ever not get the data that you?
We've never not. No, we've gone what we've needed in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cool.
If we do try anything, you'll be done for Damien. We don't want to be, it's not my intention to do anything that doesn't, I just want to clear. One other question. Do they, do they have points against their license?
Yes, I do. It's 2 points
It's 2
associated.
points, and how many when you lose your CDL?
So I mean, Vermont has 10 points, obviously, and you lose your license, I think.
Well, that's regular,
Right, regular
the
stuff.
CDL.
But so it's a major commercial motor vehicle offense. And so if you had more than one of those, you would lose your CDL, you'd be disqualified for a period of time. Yeah, I'd have to look, there's a table. It's fairly substantial. If I can get back to you on
Right.
timing of it, but yes, they would. It's a major commercial.
That- It's the points that I really worry about for the CDL driver in that place. And when I read this, that it had to be fixed, but apparently there's some gray area around that. Here's my experience. Todd brings his tractor trailer down. He delivers something in White River. He crosses the river into Lebanon. And as soon as he jumps in the truck, what he does is he texts them, but it's all voice. And he doesn't, but the phone's in his pocket. He's up in the truck and he said, "We just made the delivery here. We're coming here." And so that's the first thing that hit me when I looked at this. And it's not about him really, he's not
Yeah.
holding the phone doing the thing. I certainly wouldn't want, just because he's doing that, or someone's doing something like that they lose their license.
Yeah. And I would also say for context, it seems like when you are seeing DMV enforcement or local PD enforcement, there's usually like erratic behavior associated. It's not that you necessarily are identifying someone by
Right.
seeing a phone. Maybe that happens, but I don't see it frequently. It seems to be more there's cause, and then it's like, okay, well, the obvious thing is that we see that you've been texting and bobbing and weaving for the last 10 minutes. Well, it's probably the device. So I feel like in that scenario, if I'm understanding, it's voice to text. So it wouldn't be you holding it.
Also, I'm just trying to rationalize from like the law enforcement spectrum.
Yeah.
If I were to be there and I saw a truck drive by and in your circumstance that was occurring, all I would see you doing is talking to yourself.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't necessarily know, I wouldn't see a phone, it'd be in your pocket. I think the one potential would be, to your point, is if there was a crash.
Yeah.
And then later on, a serious crash and, investigations, and we pulled phone records and there was that stuff going on. That's where, it would be, maybe you'd have to look a little bit further. To be honest, I'm not sure the complexity from the phones and the phone services of like, we'd have to talk to our folks at like DPS, who could say like, analyze these things to say, is there a way to tell, was this text? Months later, was this text sent via voice text or was it sent via, hands-free, activation? I don't know those answers technology-wise.
Interesting.
We've got a conference committee in 5 minutes. If you guys could switch and Andy has,
It just. The thing you need, that talked about on the muffler section, you want to check the muffler section. If we're gonna do an amendment anyway, we could conclude an amendment that says, yes. That's the, say that it still has to meet federal law. But that's not in here. So. This is on page 32, section 29. So we could also say that in that first paragraph A, where it shall be equipped with an exhaust system that includes a device that reduces the noise, but you could say that. You have to be designed to reduce the noise. So say that it has to meet the federal decibel standards, but we do have a federal decibel standard requirement. So I don't know why we wouldn't say we have to meet that. But you don't have to do a decibel test, and you don't have to take apart the motorcycle to see. If you can't see the full muffler, the assumption from the inspection station would be that it's there. So you don't have to require to like take apart parts of the motorcycle to view the muffler if it's not there. But if it is there, you can tell that the stamp isn't there, then it wouldn't pass inspection.
So your intent is that if the stamp is not there, it does not pass inspection.
If you're as the Senate bill, let's pass.
Okay, so back to the Senate position.
Except if you can't see the stamp, if you can't see the whole muffler, you shall assume that the stamp is there.
Okay, so parts of the muffler are obscured.
Yeah, some, I wanted to say fenestration, that's not the right word. There's like, if you have some cladding around, because that's what we heard from, Wilkes, Harley Davidson, was that sometimes there's just a bunch of stuff, depending on how the muffler is attached. Sometimes it's out there and it's like a showpiece and you can see all around the muffler, but sometimes it's kind of internal to some cladding for protection, so you don't touch it. And so therefore, they were saying it's kind of it'll be a pain to the inspection station to kind of take that all apart.
Okay,
They might even have to take the muffler off to see where the stamp is. So I understood that being for.
Could you do like where applicable or like where you're able to visually see, like say it like that? Where visual inspection is like practical.
Like they're doing a visual inspection as the House language had. But if you, I don't know why we would send a position in if you don't have a stamp, you don't pass inspection, and you can tell that there's no stamp. Why would we say it doesn't pass?
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know. There's
I mean, that
word
that's draftable. One thing I would highlight is because of the way the federal decibel standard is tested for, an inspection station and even a law enforcement officer would be unable to.
Yeah, I'm not proposing where you're doing, the only way you can determine it is if the stamp is.
Okay.
We're not saying.
Yeah, so I was just reading the red highlights there, and it's because of the way that test is.
Well, you're saying it has to meet it, but the only way you're determining if it meets it is
Is with the stamp.
You're not saying you have to test
Okay.
it. Because there's an easy way to tell if it meets it. It has a stamp.
Yeah. So you're, if I'm understanding right, your proposal is go back to the requirement that the muffler be stamped with the federal compliance stamp. And that it also have these requirements there, that it not have missing or removed baffles.
Yes,
or cut
all
out
the House
bypass.
language. And
And then add in a proviso that if an inspection mechanic cannot reasonably determine whether a stamp is present on the muffler because of cladding or positioning of the muffler, that they would assume that it's present and just continue to check the physical integrity of the muffler.
That's fine.
Okay.
I love.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the way that, Damien, you said it, the first part of it was, to me, it wasn't clear that our intent is to require compliance with the federal law, just period. And then one way that we have compliance is the stamp.
Having the stamp is compliance with the federal law. Federal law
Right.
requires that all mufflers that meet the EPA requirements be stamped with a specific information. So what we would say is we use the language from the Senate version that says have stamps meeting the requirements, 49 USC, etc.
Right, but are we still gonna have a separate sentence that says we are requiring compliance with the federal law?
In that subsection A, could we say that in there, or do we don't need that? I guess it's,
That's what
maybe
we
it's
said
just
in
a
our
standard language.
Yeah.
Well, there might be a different
Yeah.
way to comply
Yeah,
in
it
the
is.
future too.
Yeah, in the future.
So we get sound.
We gotta go to our.
We have to go to our conference committee. So those are the two areas. We'll work with Damien, we'll get something put together and we'll send it around there.
And since I won't be here for the next 3 days, I am very supportive of this direction and you can count me full blessing.
Okay,